Hey guys, this is Court. Just wanted to let you know the podcast episode that you're about to listen to is one that we recorded prior to April the 2nd, ready to be released on April the 3rd. The podcast, fittingly enough, is an episode about tariffs. Well, it turns out that President Donald Trump has designated April the 2nd, which will for you at least be yesterday, 2025, as the implementation date for several significant tariff measures aimed at promoting domestic manufacturing and addressing trade imbalances. So by the time that you hear this, while we recording it don't know if Trump actually followed through with all of his proposed tariffs, if he did, by the time you listen to this, you will know something that we didn't when we recorded it. So have fun with that. Also, as I record this today, there was a specific tariff listed, 25% on imports of all automobiles and automobile parts from outside the United States. So it also is due at the same time, right prior to this episode being released. So we'll see you in the future.
And welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me today is Court Winsett.
Hello, Katie.
And an empty chair to my right.
Indeed. Cameron couldn't make it today.
He's on spring break.
Well, his children are on spring break. I don't know if you talk to any parent ever that's done a spring break vacation with their kids. I'm not sure how much break they get.
No, I mean, but he is doing a kind of a history trip. He's
absolutely.
in D.C. and sending us pictures of lots of the historical places he's visiting. Mm-hmm. So we thought while he was gone, let's talk about something equally as exciting.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, who doesn't want to talk about tariffs?
Yeah, one of the original sources of revenue for our Department of Revenue, Treasury Department, was tariffs. I mean, like back in the day.
Yeah.
So we're getting back to basics here.
Getting back to basics. Also, this is a huge buzz in the community. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about tariffs, obviously, with President Trump. He is mentioning a ton about this. This episode, we're going to educate. We're going to talk about tariffs. We're going to give you some understanding. We are not going to give you our opinion one way or the other on what exactly is happening right now. So do not expect to come out of this and be like, oh, I can tell Court leans one way or the other, or Katie does. We're going to try and keep that to a bias because, again, we are just educational. Unbiased. Sorry, unbiased. Yes. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
We're not going to show our bias. Yes.
We're not going to show our bias with this, but this is educational.
When Trump was reelected, he talked about instating or reinstating some tariffs. He took office in January. He talked about putting tariffs in place against Canada, Mexico, China, the European Union. He's put some in place and then put them on hold for a little bit.
Because you've got the threat of tariffs. Yeah. You've got actually putting them in place.
Economists have expressed many different opinions about what the actual effect of tariffs would be if they are, in fact, put in place and followed through on. Obviously, the market reacts to all of this stuff, and it can cause
just from even the rumor of a tariff, markets react.
Yeah.
And that's why we felt like this is very well timed because a lot of people are worried about buying vehicles, buying lots of different things because of the threat of tariffs.
Right.
Obviously, with this, financial markets are reacting, consumers are concerned. Tariffs are a hot topic with the global economies. And so what we're looking at is what exactly are tariffs? How do they affect businesses and the consumer? How do they affect your everyday purchase? So let's break this down.
Tariffs are, the easiest way to put it is they are a tax on imports, on goods that are imported.
Yeah.
They are paid by the importer. If someone imports something from overseas, they pay a tariff when they import it.
So everybody's freaking out about their Shein and their Temu. I happened to be in Scotland, Ireland area when Trump was in office previously, and when the threat of tariffs on the Irish whiskey, and I was actually at a distillery with the whiskey man, who was
the whiskey man.
He, I wish I could
kind of like the candy man.
I wish I could play the recording because he's like, "Oh, you'll Mr. Trump with the tariffs on my whiskey," and I'm like, "Oh God!" At that point, it's like, "I love your whiskey. I'm sorry.
please give us your whiskey.
We will take your whiskey."
Because of exactly what tariffs tax, I use that term as the easiest, simplest way of putting it. Because of what tariffs tax, namely imports, we thought it would be fun to do a list that was related to America's most popular things that are imported from other countries.
Yeah, because you may not think about it.
Number one, coffee. U.S. imports significant quantities of coffee beans primarily from Brazil, Colombia, and other Central and South American countries. But on some level, I knew this, but it didn't really occur to me you don't hear a whole lot about American crops of coffee beans.
No,
mostly South American.
Yeah, because people talk about the real strong coffee. I mean, I think you hear a little bit about when people go to Hawaii, then they talk about the coffee there. Coffee is very particular. So this could really derail and upset somebody if all of a sudden their favorite brand of coffee, Parmesan cheese.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of that sprinkled on top of your pasta. Authentic Parmesan, known as Parmigiano Reggiano.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Listen, I don't speak Italian, but you got it about exactly as I would have pronounced
it. So it's obviously, as you would think, it's imported from Italy. In the green container, the Kraft.
Kraft? You don't think Kraft is Parmigiano?
I don't think so.
Reggiano?
That is I don't know why that is branded Parmesan. When you had your spaghetti, that's what you'd sprinkle on top.
That is not
Parmesan
cheese. Yeah. And it's Parmesan powder. Parmesan.
Yes, this is not going to be that Kraft.
This is not Parmigiano.
Yeah, and I said Kraft, not crap. Just to clarify. If you're a cheese lover, then obviously Parmesan cheese, all cheeses, nice quality ones. You have to worry. Well, not all. A lot of nice cheeses are coming from other places.
100%. Okay, next on the list is champagne. If you have ever been corrected by a true champagne aficionado, then you know that true champagne only comes exclusively from the Champagne region of France. Yeah. If you're drinking anything that does not come from the Champagne region of France, you are not drinking champagne. You are drinking
sparkling wine
or Prosecco or something like that. So
this is why in Epcot in France, then they've got a whole champagne bar.
Indeed. Champagne, obviously, if there were a tariff on champagne. Ooh.
You'd have to worry about that, yeah.
Yep.
Your champagne toast at New Year's. Okay, bananas. This has become a favorite of mine lately. I've been enjoying a banana for breakfast.
Interesting.
And so U.S. imports bananas primarily from Guatemala. And with imports valued at $1.0 billion in 2020.
$1 billion. That's
a lot of bananas.
That is a lot of bananas. Next on the list is olive oil. The U.S. imports significant quantities of olive oil, especially from Spain, Italy, and yes, you guessed it, or maybe you didn't, Greece. Whenever I think of olive oil and olives just in general, for whatever reason, I think of Greece. Whenever I get a Greek salad or a Mediterranean salad, there's always olives on them. Definitely that region known for its olive trees, the original olive branch, piece and so forth. That all comes from that Mediterranean, whatever Spain is. It's not Mediterranean, but that general
area.
Yeah.
What about chocolate?
Oh,
so cocoa, primary ingredients in chocolate is imported from countries like
Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, sorry, we're going to butcher that in Ghana.
Yeah, that's easy. Ghana.
But so your precious chocolate. I mean, your Girl Scout cookies got chocolate in them. You got to worry about it. Your Reese's, all of that. There's lots of stuff that has chocolate. Hershey's chocolate.
Yeah, and cocoa and the harvesting of cocoa. What I imagined it being versus what it actually looks like. There are two very different things. I saw it on TV, and it's very interesting how it is harvested. It's not a particularly appealing process. I like the finished product.
I don't think I did it. Was the cocoa powder that you would get, and how cocoa powder you would think tastes like chocolate, and it is not.
Yeah,
it is very bitter.
Very bitter. You did chocolate, right?
I did chocolate.
I get to do the next one?
Yep.
How fitting is this? Next one, popular imported beers. Come from countries like Mexico, Germany. I'm going to add a few other countries. Belgium has some great imports. France has some great imports. Obviously, they didn't even mention Scotland and Ireland.
Yeah. We didn't talk about whiskey or anything on here.
Scotch whiskey comes from, obviously, Scotland. We've got plenty of our own whiskey right here.
That's true.
I don't know a whole lot of American citizens of the United States that are opting for Canadian whiskey over bourbon or Jack Daniels.
True.
Or something like that.
Forget what I said.
There is the occasional person who's really like, man, give me some Crown Royal. And of course, Crown comes from Canada.
Well, of course it does, because they're so nice to give you your own little purple bag to carry your bottle in. Nobody else gives you a bag to carry your bottle.
No.
What about tomatoes?
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Yeah.
I don't care. They can keep all the tomatoes.
The U.S. imported $2.5 billion worth of tomatoes from Mexico in 2020, representing 31% of international tomato trade.
Wow. Next on the list is avocados. If you're familiar with TV at all, you've probably heard the commercial, avocados from Mexico.
Yep.
I guess nearly as popular as tomatoes. The U.S. imported $2.1 billion worth of avocados from Mexico in 2020. California produces a whole lot of avocados as well, but obviously we're bringing in a lot of avocados from Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one, wine. U.S. imports $6.8 billion worth of wine in 2023.
Wow.
Mostly from the European Union, including countries like France and Italy.
Yeah.
I would say majority of your wine. Yes, you've got places
here
in the States.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
And you've got wine that's coming from Brazil, Argentina, things like that.
Australia.
Australia.
Australia and New Zealand both have a couple of good wines.
But when you think of a good wine, more than likely you're thinking about Italy.
It's French. Why do you think that they have this outrageous accent?
I mean, Remy told us that, right? You got to have the good wine.
Yes.
So what are tariffs?
Well, I don't know. What are tariffs?
We talked about that a little bit, but most countries are limited by their natural resources, ability to produce certain goods and services. They trade with other countries to get what their population needs and demands. Wow, this is going back to like early episodes where we talked about the barter system of, Court, I have cows on my property. You have chickens. Can we meet together and trade? I give you beef. You give me eggs. You give me chicken.
Yes. One of the reasons that the United States of America has been such a strong country, and certainly the second half of the 20th century, prior to that, obviously, growth, it grew very well prior to that. But man, we really hit a boom in the second half of the 20th century. A lot of that has to do with the resources that we have. We have a tremendous amount of natural resources here in America. There have been, over the couple of centuries, 2.5 centuries, we have been a nation, an actual country. There have been people whose instinct it was to protect the producers of those natural resources from foreign. Obviously, one of the ways that you can protect your local producers from foreign producers is by taxing anything that is imported from foreign producers, and that is a tariff.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you may see a lot of stuff where it's like American made, U.S., and you'll see different cycles of your life where that's really driven and pushed. And if you go to a restaurant and it may be like that farm to table where they're saying, we're using local ingredients, we're using this, we're using that. It's one of those that there are some things that just don't make sense to be made in a certain country or in a certain city or state. And so you have to have some resources coming from other places.
Right.
As Court said, tariffs are tax imposed on imported goods. Governments use them to regulate trade, protect domestic industries, and sometimes as political leverage. There is a lot that goes into that. And obviously, as Court said, hey, we want to protect that we want only US of A bananas being bought.
Bananas, because we got to protect those banana growers here in the U.S.
So I just picked something random. And so then it's like, okay, well, let's put a tariff on these other bananas. So then it's less desirable to bring in more bananas.
Right.
Because we got good bananas here. We don't need to have those other bananas.
Yeah, those foreign bananas.
Foreign bananas. We don't want that. There's going to still be people who I like the foreign bananas better than the U.S. bananas. So it's to regulate trade because we are having this agreement of, hey, we're going to send you this stuff. You send us that stuff. So imports and exports, because we also send a lot of stuff to other places as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So it's trade agreement. It's also, so we're protecting what's happening here. A lot of conversations right now is about U.S. industries, what's happening here, making sure that we are continuing to stay relevant, that we've got companies here that are taking care of stuff. We're able to be sustainable, and political leverage.
Yeah. A couple of things that I'm going to run through, a couple of different phrases that you've probably heard in relation to tariffs. Going to run through them real quick. I'm going to try and define them as best I can, but we're not going to get real deep into them today. If you have heard people discussing, say, on the news, tariffs, then you have probably heard somebody mention the fact that there is a trade deficit between the United States and some other country. A trade deficit would be where we are actually importing more from that country, whether it's of a particular product or just overall goods, than we are exporting to that country. Okay. And generally speaking, there are many who believe that having a trade deficit like that is bad. Buzzword that you will hear a lot, trade deficit.
We feel like they're making more money off of us than we are getting a benefit of sending to them.
Right. And then another big thing that you will hear frequently is that American manufacturing is down. Manufacturing jobs are down because other places can manufacture things more cheaply. They pay less for labor in a place, for instance, like China. We just don't have it. Hurts our laborers here because they can't.
We're outsourcing.
Yeah, there are different opinions about whether we need to replace those manufacturing jobs with a different type of employment or if we need those manufacturing jobs back. If we need them back, then people would argue that the reason that you put a tariff in place is because it protects manufacturing labor. Mm-hmm. We can artificially impose a higher price on manufactured goods that we bring into America and therefore protect the stuff that we're manufacturing here in the United States and therefore protect our laborers who, generally speaking, work at a higher rate than someone over in the Far East.
It's complicated stuff.
It is. It's very complicated. I hope that didn't get too complicated, but that's just, those are two things that I hear a lot about.
No, I think that was really a good explanation, and that's where there should be a lot of thought process that goes into putting tariffs in place or not, because it's not just trying to make your Scotch whiskey more expensive or your avocados more expensive. It is actually trying to figure out, do we need to rebalance the trade agreement between us and another country? Do we need to try and protect the jobs and try and bring more jobs back to the States? It is not just they're out to get you because they want to make your favorite brand of coffee more expensive. So common types of tariffs, specific tariffs, a fixed fee per unit of the good. So for example, the U.S. imposed a $25 per ton tariff on certain imported steel products. This means that no matter the price of steel, the tariff remained at a flat $25 per ton.
Right. Another type of tariff would be an ad valorem tariff. The phrase ad valorem is Latin for according to value.
Okay.
So it's basically on a percentage of the goods value. So in the U.S., the U.S. applies 2.5% tariff on imported passenger vehicles. So if the car costs $30,000, then the tariff is going to be $750. Price of the car increases to $40,000, then the tariff is going to be $1,000. Yep. The tariff actually goes up with the price of the good that's being imported.
And then retaliatory.
If you put a tariff on our goods, we're going to put a tariff on yours.
It's a pissing match.
Yeah.
It's a trade war.
That is when we get into trade war. Yeah. And certainly is what we're hearing a lot about in the news lately is
you're going to put tariff on us bringing in coffee. Well, we're going to tariff you on cotton or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yes, definitely. A key point to understand, it affects the exporting country because consumers in the country that impose the tariff might shy away from imports from that country due to the price increase.
Let's break that down.
Yeah. Like, for instance, this is one of the things that you hear a lot of argument about in the news.
Okay.
If we impose a tariff on a Chinese good, for instance, the Chinese good is going to come over to America. The person who is importing it, more than likely, let's say it's an American business.
Okay.
The American business that is importing it is actually the one that pays the tariff.
Yeah.
For instance, if we are imposing whatever percent tariff on all Chinese cars, the importer, one of our companies, is going to be the one that pays that tariff. But it affects not only people here in the United States who would potentially see an increase in the price of their car because of the tariff placed on that car, but also the country who is exporting is probably going to see a negative impact on the amount that they are able to export because demand for their good over here is going to drop if Americans are less inclined to buy because the price has gone up.
I don't know if y'all remember a couple of episodes ago, I talked about how Cam and I went to a local high school and interviewed a bunch of seniors just to kind of get them to practice doing interviews. He's got some kind of candy that he gets from Japan and China, then he sells. And so him and some buddies or whatever, they've got like a business structure set up. And he talked about how now it's, if, you know, with tariffs and stuff threats, it's going to cost him more, which then turns to he's going to have to cost his buyers more.
His customers more,
Yeah. So then he's now worried because his profit, here's the dilemma. This one chocolate bar typically he was able to pay 50 cents for it, and then he turned around and sold it for $1. He had a 50-cent profit. Now he's got a tariff. It's going to charge him 75 cents. Does he then charge me that same dollar and have a smaller profit to then try and keep his business, or does he increase it and then know he's going to potentially lose business?
Does he increase it to cover the full amount of the tariff? Or so, for instance, does he go from $1 to $1.25?
Yeah.
Or does he just increase it partially in hopes that the increase will not negatively impact his sales as much?
Or is he now going to start looking for going a totally different direction?
Is he going to try and start producing the candy here in America?
Finding it somewhere where he gets it cheaper.
Where he can buy it cheaper because there is no tariff and so forth.
Yeah.
That is definitely the logic for those people that are pro-tariff. If we place tariffs on things from abroad, then people will either buy the stuff that is already produced locally, or if it's not produced locally, then hopefully the tariffs would encourage companies to start producing it locally.
Yeah. However, if the consumer still chooses to import the products, the tariffs have essentially raised the cost. We talked about that. Pros and cons of tariffs. Pros, protects domestic industries. We've talked about that. It's really, a lot of times it's not, again, them trying to charge you more for your coffee, for your avocados, for anything like that. There's something bigger going on behind the scenes. Creating jobs. Obviously, if we can find ways to make it here, generates government revenue. As Court, you talked about your history lesson at the beginning. That was the first.
That was one of the original ways that Alexander Hamilton, one of my favorites, proposed raising money for the U.S. was by imposing tariffs. And this has nothing to do with tariffs, but every time I think about Hamilton, I always think about the rap battle between Hamilton. Jefferson says, how do you think they're going to, when you try to tax our whiskey? There's all sorts of little tidbits in that play. Anyway.
But it's a history lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Cons. Let's talk about cons for a second. Higher prices for consumers.
This is why everybody's up in arms. This is what they're worried about.
And this is probably the most direct relation to the markets are concerned that prices are going to go up. If prices go up, that means that we could be seeing an increase in inflation. Inflation is bad, okay? And the market doesn't like any of that. Retaliation from other countries, obviously.
We're hearing about that.
Yeah. We impose a 25% tariff on all goods imported from China. Then China turns around and goes, well, we're going to do the same for you.
Yeah.
Hurts exporting industries.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty obvious, but you impose a tariff and then the country you impose a tariff on imposes a tariff, then our exporters are going to suffer from the effects of tariffs in the country that they're trying to export to just as much as our importers are suffering from our own tariffs.
And it's going to go back to negotiation, because you think about like a lot of these imports, exports, it's not the candy bar philosophy we talked about.
Right.
It is mass quantities we're talking about. There's negotiations that happen. So it's like, okay, yeah, we're agreeing to buy 30,000 worth of X product from the United States to the EU. And now all of a sudden, if there's then more taxes that are going to be hit on them, they then may negotiate and say, we can't guarantee 30 anymore. We can maybe do 20,000 from y'all. So that's an impact. The other thing to think about is because personal people who are in the car industry.
Yes.
So the car industry is a big thing that people are worried about. And the question you may go, okay, well, that's an American company. Those vehicles are made here in America. Guess what?
Not even American-made vehicles are, all of the pieces in them are made in America.
No. That's where we saw with COVID, with things like that. You had the chip shortage. There is so much everybody uses in a day-to-day basis that is a part of imports and exports. Right. Even just the small components where 90% of the product could be built in America, but that 10% that's imported in, that's going to cause the price to go up. That could cause shortage if we're having this kind of trade war, trade deficit, looking at that. Again, it's a big impact. You put the nail on the head. This is an economic lesson. This is something about how when you hear the word tariffs, I need you to really understand what's happening. And it's not the meme I saw where it's Oprah standing, you get a tariff and you get a tariff and you get a tariff. Like, you hope that that's not what it is and that people aren't just willy-nilly throwing tariffs out there, that there's a lot of thought process behind it on the overall impact.
That is certainly what you hope.
You hope. But again, it's kind of boiling back to the basics of how every single component of your life ends up going back to finances. Every single component of looking at, these tariffs, there's so many different components that go into to it. And it's ultimately trying to figure out what's going to be the best for the economy overall to then make sure. But it's obviously then could be manipulated by the agendas of who's in charge and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, you can use the imposition of tariffs, obviously, as a negotiating point, just as much as you can use it as a protectionist. I would argue that it's not as necessary these days for raising actual national funds. We don't need to impose tariffs to raise money for the countries. There are more effective ways to do that, but that was obviously a reason to impose tariffs a long time ago. Protectionism, like I said, is another reason, but then also just as a negotiating point. We'll put this tariff on you. We'll consider not putting this tariff on you
if you help us with XYZ.
Yeah, exactly. Some reasoning behind it. Markets don't like it. I mean, the markets have not been responding well to all the talk of tariffs. That is just what it is.
A lot of noise, a lot of talk.
But there you go. That's at least a little opener to it.
I mean, yeah, that's very high level of what tariffs are. So hopefully when you're hearing it on the news, you're at least understanding the ins and outs of it. And you kind of get that point of why were they in place? Why do we still use them? What are the pros and cons of it? And so you can at least be educated on it. And again, this is not us giving our opinion one way or the other. Tariffs have a time and a place, and we'll just have to see what happens. There may be a part 2 of this episode of like, okay, here's the tariffs that were in place. This is what's going on now.
Oh, there's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast Podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, then please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast delivered directly to your listening device. Absolutely free. No tariffs involved. Every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Court and Katie, we're here today. Cameron and Nicole, they're not, but they're always with us in spirit. You can feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got bios up there, pictures. We've got a place where you can suggest a topic, drop a comment, or just talk about anything you'd like to hear us talk about on the podcast. But I mentioned pictures. We do have pictures. We also have an Instagram handle. That handle is at Bullcast Podcast. We have an X handle, which is at Bullcast Podcast as well. And we have a Facebook page, which is Bullcast the Podcast. Finally, we do work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you'd like to find out more about us, more about what we do, more about what we can do for you, if you would like to find out about our amazing team and our boss, David Pickler, then please feel free to go to that website, which is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E. Ladies and gentlemen, we've given you everything you need to go forth, buy some bananas and some coffee. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
And we're done.